What's up, guys? George Balekji here with Foxborough Rush. But hey, check out the latest episode of Boston Has Entered the Chat, wherever you get your podcast. Casey Hudson and I go through what it's looking like for the Patriots as they look towards the draft, how we see Travis Hunter fitting into the team. We also talk about Bill Belichick in his latest Instagram escapade with his girlfriend on the beach, and it's just cringe. And then finally, the debut of F1 Race Review. Casey and I break down the Australian Grand Prix, what it means for Lando Norris, how Max Verstappen looks moving forward, and what is Ferrari going to do with Lewis. All that and more on Boston Has Entered the Chat. Wherever you get your podcast, wherever you listen, wherever you watch. Now, let's get to Foxborough Rush. What's up? What's happening? George Balekji here. He's Keagan Stiefel. Keegs, I like the remote location, my guy. Man of mystery.
Yeah. Listen, Uncle of the Year award's not going to me this time. Forgot it was my niece's birthday. So this is a true road game. As you can see, I'm in the car. If I can point in the right direction. We're at a park somewhere, so hopefully people don't interrupt this wonderful podcast we have going today.
Wait, so are you on the way to the niece? Or are you on the way back from the niece's B-Day? Are you going to miss it completely?
I'm like 4 minutes away from the birthday party. It's currently happening. We had some lunch. I'm going to do this podcast. We're going to go back. She's going to open up the gift I got her, and then we're back on the road. We're going home.
So you went, you're taking a break, and then you're going to go back. You're good, man. In my opinion, you're good.
Listen, this is the smart way to go. If anybody in my family listens to this, they know Keegan gets overwhelmed at birthday parties. I don't like the amount of people. My family, it's everybody. I think everybody who's in their mid-20s knows going to a family birthday party and having to sit there and answer questions is a nightmare. So I'm getting a nice little break. Keegan's doing his break, which he already does anyway. And then I'll be back, and we'll do the presents. We'll do the cake. I think I've handled this pretty well.
Kind of would have been electric if you did it from the birthday party with the noise and then during the cake and you pushed your niece's face into, but
just 5-year-olds. Yeah.
You're a professional. I hate the small talk. Hey, how's work? Good. You don't know what I do. You do not care. And I'm not going to ask you about being a general contractor because although that's interesting and I think a lot more interesting what I do, I'm just not going to ask because I really don't care about the answer.
I could not want to answer questions about work right now, less if I wanted to. So I'm fine by sneaking off and doing a podcast in the car.
Awesome. Well, the questions I'll be asking you are about the wide receiving room for the Patriots. We'll be talking about Travis Hunter and the aspect and what it looks like for him to possibly be drafted at 4. What do the Pats do overall to address the offensive side of the ball? Because we'll talk about Marcus Epps, Jack Gibbons, more defensive players, and we'll also take some mailbag questions as well. We always like to take the questions and comments from our YouTube page. If you think, guys, by the way, our listeners, our viewers, love you guys, love the support. If you think you're going to leave a comment and I'm not going to read it, ooh, you are mistaken. I love it. Good or bad, call me out, pump me up. Same with Keegs, same with Trav. We'll bring it into the conversation. So anyone watching right now, go ahead and leave a comment. What are you wondering? What do you think of Marcus Epps? What do you think of Matt Collins? What do you think of Jack Gibbons? What do you think of Keegan's awesome backwards hat? Because I think he looks great. This is like a Fast and Furious meets Foxborough Rush. Match made in heaven,
green, baby.
If you ask me. All right, so Keegan, you and I went through the free agency period. We said they exceeded expectations. They delivered on what they had to do. They improved the defense. And there were some other adds on offense. There still is a massive void. Center, left guard, left tackle. They have Layden Robinson, Cole Strange, and blank at left tackle. Wide receiver. They got Matt Collins. I'm a Matt Collins fan. He's a wide receiver 4. You need a 2 at minimum. You don't have that, let alone a 1. So let's get into that. There were all the connections the Patriots had to the top wide receivers out there. Chris Godwin, they reportedly offered him $20 million more over the full value of a contract. He said, no thanks, I'll stay in Tampa. A team closer to the playoff window, and we don't know the guaranteed money. Cooper Kupp, he signed with the Seahawks, 3 years, $45 million. There have been reports that it got to a point where the Patriots said, we're good. If you change your stance, come to us, but we're not going to overpay for you. DK Metcalf trade to the Steelers. The Patriots apparently didn't even offer a trade to Pittsburgh, and they had a better draft pick. Didn't get Devontae Adams. He ended up with the Rams. Better situation for someone like him. And the Patriots, well, they didn't even have a chance to get Ronnie Stanley at left tackle. Focusing on the wide receiving and what we're looking at right now, Keegs, what do you make of where they're at right now when it comes to free agency, when it comes to everything of how the wide receiver situation is for them?
You were never going to fix it in one offseason.
No.
And that's something that when looking at the totality of what they did, I think a lot of people forget the aspect of this is the 2 to 3 year rebuild. And we said it last offseason. I think they had a little bit more grace last offseason because it was the start of a completely new era, right? Mm-hmm. And even though they've restarted again, they've hit the reset button, it still feels like they're in the midst of that rebuild. So going from Bill Belichick to anybody was the start of it. And even though they hit reset and they've gone from Gerard Mayo to Mike Vrabel, I think people still see this as, all right, but what about the stuff you did last year? How does that relate to what you're doing this year? Like, why aren't we closer to contending
Yep.
than we thought we would be? So I think there is a mindset change that needs to happen where it's you hit the reset button again and you've had to completely revamp this roster again. So with what they did defensively, I think they made a lot of really smart moves. They added depth. They added a veteran presence at all three levels. I really like what they did defensively. Offensively, and looking at the market and looking at who was available and all of those different aspects, it's kind of obvious that they were never going to be able to fix it throughout free agency. So I think they're going about it in the way of, all right, we can do what we can do defensively through free agency. And now, once we shift our focus to the draft, here's when we're going to try to find cornerstone pieces, not superstars, but cornerstone pieces on the offense, whether it's a left guard, a left tackle, a wide receiver, whatever it might be.
Yeah, and that's where, what did Mike Vrabel say that stuck out to both of us? He was like, I'm going to be intentional. I'm not going to be reckless.
Right.
And that was them talking about why they let David Andrews go. Well, not more of why, but what they're going to do to address the offensive line. And I think that goes into why they didn't trade for DK Metcalf. 38th overall pick, going to pay the guy a ton. Do you like him in the cultural fit? I did not buy for a second, Keeg, the report that came out of he's not a scheme fit for Josh McDaniels. He would be a wide receiver one, and at that, he'd be an absolute dominant apex predator on the outside. And he changes how you call plays and how you just build out your whole game plan. He would change how defenses match up with him. But to trade for him, to pay him a ton, and then that guy's the highest paid person in your building, that's something that they don't want to be reckless with. And I think that's why they went out of the DK Metcalf sweepstakes. With Chris Godwin, there is a report. They offered him $20 million more. He got $44 guaranteed from the Bucs. What was the guaranteed money? Because that's what guys want. And the same thing, look at the timeline. They are so far away from the playoffs. The Buccaneers are in the playoffs. He knows what he's walking into, especially at his age. And when it came to Cooper Kupp, I'm happy with them being intentional with the offers. Where it got to a number and they go, look, dude, you're going to be 32. Cooper Kupp's been an all-pro once. He's been a Pro Bowler once. That was 2021. Since then, he's never had more than 12 games played, never more than 850 yards, never more than 75 receptions. And his last two seasons, he's a 750 guy, 60 catches, 750 average. He's missed 19 games since that 2021 season. So same thing. They were being intentional of what's our cutoff? Who do we want? How much are we going to pay you? And they're just being mindful of the spending in a way. And people are going to roll their eyes. Oh, my God. We've been mindful of the spending. Robert Kraft is cheap. It was also a little bit of Bill Belichick not wanting to pay guys more than the head coach, which is a philosophy that he abides by and how he looks at things. So even with the Devontae Adams, same thing is going to be the highest paid. With Cam Robinson, they don't want to be reckless with that. That's what I think, where you've also heard Elliot Wolf come out and say, this draft is meatier in the middle rounds for a receiver. When they have a huge need at tackle and they still have a need at receiver, but there are the first round tackles, Will Campbell, Armand Membu, Kelvin Banks, Josh Connerly, which I don't love him, but I think he'd be better in a better spot.
Josh Simmons.
Exactly. Who's going to hold his own pro day? Josh Simmons, I love. He'd be tackle one if he didn't tear his knee up for Ohio State. He's going to hold his own pro day, which tells me, okay, that knee is recovering well. If you're down to do these movements and make that risk. Arante Ursary out of Minnesota. I know you love him. I'm in the middle with him. Don't love him, but I understand he has that framework and what you want. So, and I point all that out of they can go tackle first round. They can go receiver later in the draft. I think that's where they go. But that's where, in the draft too, with the way they spent free agency, that's not sustainable. The age of the guys they brought in, like a Harold Landry's 29. Milton Williams is young, about to hit his prime. Robert Spillane, 29. And that's where you have these, that's not sustainable how you build a roster. Why are the Eagles great? Why have the Bills have had a good reset? Why is the Chiefs defense always dominant? Look at the amount of guys they've drafted. Nick Bolton, right? There's the Leo Chenals. Then, of course, there's the Chris Jones, the Trent McDuffies, the Justin Reeds. Some guys they let walk. Some guys they extend. And that's how it goes, so on and so forth. That's what they're going to bring into it. Now, we don't love the tackle class at 4. We don't love the wide receiver class at 4. But they can address those needs the other way. And I just think that's how they're going to continue to go about it, Keegan.
Yeah, you hear this a lot where you mention the idea of address the defensive free agency and draft for offense. And just last year, we have an example of that not working, right? They whiffed on tackle with Caden Wallace. They whiffed on two wide receivers with Jalen Polk and Javon Baker. But in my mind, I come to the situation of if you're going to the casino and you sit down at a blackjack table and you get a 15, you hit on it, you get a 7, tough, you end up losing. Are you just going to never hit on a 15 again? Are you never going to trust what you believe is the right thing to do because it backfired on you once? Like, I don't understand the idea of, all right, they failed at this last year, so they shouldn't even try it again. Restart, refresh your entire ideology of how you're going to build this team. That makes zero sense to me. And if you don't trust Matt Groh and Elliott Wolf and the guys who were in the building last year, I completely understand it. I think from what we've seen them do throughout Groh, obviously having a longer tenure here, but Wolf and his year and a half of running this team, if you don't trust them, I get it. But they're not the only two guys making decisions right now. Mike Vrabel has final say over who's going to be on his roster. I believe that 150%. I think Ryan Cowden has a really large input, and I think he's more trusted by Mike Vrabel than maybe anybody else in the building other than John Stryker, who is another guy who is coming in and he's changing the complexity of like what this front office looks like.
Yeah.
So I trust in trusting your gut and believing in the way you want to build this roster and doubling down and trying to do it again over completely changing the ideology that you have entering the offseason and throwing money at old wide receivers and signing these tackles who probably aren't top of the market guys, but giving them top of the market money because you have such a need at left tackle. Trust what you believe in. Do what the smart teams and the successful teams do, which is draft and develop offensive talent and pay the guys who you want to stay for a long time, ship the guys who you don't off, and get more draft capital and do it all over again.
Hey, if you're enjoying the conversation, make sure to check out Foxborough Rush. Wherever you get your podcast, please subscribe. Please download. It helps us out a ton. Also, watch it on Nesson's YouTube page, too. It's Foxborough Rush, all things Patriots and the NFL all year long. All the talk about Drake May, Mike Vrabel, the number 4 overall pick. Get whatever you want about the Patriots right wherever you listen to your podcast with Foxborough Rush. Yeah, that's with, think of the payday that like Dan Moore got. And where there's an overpay. And even the Chiefs, what they did at left tackle. Blanking on his name, but signing the guy from San Francisco that's played 12 games at left tackle. But like
Jalen Moore.
Yes, that was it. Jalen Moore. Thank you. And when they look at Cam Robinson, I hate those reports of, well, there's a question that he could kick his feet up, he gets paid. Where to me, Mike Vrabel, Doug Marrone are the type of guys where you go, like that's why you bring them in to readjust that. But when the Cam Robinson signing hasn't happened yet, and when those reports are coming out, like that's coming from an informed source, aka the Patriots, most likely, they know more than we do. Doug Marrone drafted, or was there when Cam Robinson was drafted. Mike Vrabel is very connected in football and very well respected. And I'm not going to go through the whole coaching staff, but these guys know guys. They know, like Thomas Brown connected to Sean McVay. He probably has a connection to Kevin O'Connell. They're asking about Cam Robinson after he's traded there. Like that. This is informed reporting, and that's where we're not going to be reckless. Being reckless is giving that money where we find these red flags where it is off the field, because it's more than ability. It's what the buy-in is from the guy and the commitment and just wanting to be a professional. That's what they have to navigate. And to the point I think you make that's great of, okay, so Jalen Polk, Javon Baker didn't work. So we're not going to draft wide receivers. We're going to pay for old, washed-up vets that are coming off injuries or injury-prone. When you have Tyler Hughes as your wide receiving coach, who was never in that type of position before, and the reports that came out of New England is that was a guy that was overmatched, just like not the right fit at all, and just simply didn't work. We don't love Todd Downing as a wide receiving coach, but he's a long-time NFL coach. Josh McDaniels, you mentioned it when we were talking about Ashton Grant being the QB coach. You're like, yeah, well, Josh McDaniels is a QB coach, which I agree with. He's going to be the wide receiving coach. Thomas Brown, coming from Sean McVay, as a passing game coordinator. He's going to be the wide receiving coach. Those three guys will be pouring themselves into the wide receiver room, where even you look at what the use was with a Jalen Polk. You can't give up on a guy after year one. And I'm not saying he's going to be a wide receiver one out of nowhere. If you get him to be serviceable, where also he was used like in alignment out wide 80% of his snaps with the Patriots when he was playing. That was never the usage he had at Washington. When he had Jalen McMillan and Rome Odunze, he was like a 60-40, 60% outside, 40% lining up in the slot at Washington. much different all around scenario and situation where you had two elite receivers opposite of you, where he had to be the best guy there. And that's where it's going to be. Javon Baker apparently has done well in meeting Mike Vrabel at first. For a guy that simply wasn't active on game day, if he gets in line with Mike Vrabel and buys into him and starts showing up, that is the explosive outside receiver that's twitchy, that's quick, that's good. And again, can he be a wide receiver 3? And that's where they look at it. And then as it talks with Keagan, and we'll get into draft guys, Xavier Restrepo, he's ready to play in the pros now. Jalen Noel, I absolutely love out of Iowa State. Athletic freak, long arms, really good, really strong. He could be in the slot. Jaden Higgins, a bigger slot. That's what a guy would translate to the NFL. Then you get into the Trey Harrises, the Pat Bryants. And that's where they're at, where they can play slow. I don't love the void at the 3 tackle spots or the 3 offensive line spots: center, left guard, left tackle. And again, Keagan, with all this, they could be looking at Layden Robinson and go, no. You are a violent run blocker. You were phenomenal in that spot. We're going to help you out with pass pro. And then in reality, with center, with left tackle, they have solutions there. And I just think it's the long play. It wasn't going to be done in one offseason. They were going to fix the offense in one offseason period either, just free agency.
Just think about the offensive line. In all reality, the likeliest outcome we see, Cole Strange, who was drafted as a center, transitioned to guard. If he transitions back to center and he's just dependable, that's an upgrade over what you had last season. Yep. Layden Robinson in his second year with an offensive line coach who's one of the most respected guys who comes from that kind of background, an offensive line background, and Doug Marrone, with him teaching him maybe if he takes a 5% increase in pass blocking and he continues to be as good of a run blocker, that's an upgrade. Left tackle, your first round pick, 80% of the time, if we run these mock drafts, is probably going to end up being an offensive tackle. Whether it's Will Campbell, Armand Membu, Josh Simmons. We were talking about him, 7 minutes ago. I'll draft Josh Simmons 4th. I'll do it. Give me a guy who I know can play the position. Can he do it right now because his knee exploded last year? Maybe not. But once he gets healthy, he might just be that guy.
Yes.
So I think there's no doubt in my mind the group that we see in week 1, or at least training camp, who knows what happens with injuries moving forward, it will be better than what we had at the end of last season in New England, which was a disaster.
Yeah.
And the wide receiving crew, Mac Hollins is an upgrade, right, at wide receiver 4. Kayshon Boutte, can he take another step? Jalen Polk and Javon Baker, if they give you anything, it's an upgrade.
Yep.
Pop Douglas is a reliable slot receiver. So if you go draft one of these guys that you just mentioned in the 3rd, 4th round, maybe even the 2nd round pick, and you can just add them to a system that Josh McDaniels has been running for 25 years that does not need these big body outside receivers. He wants guys who know how to get open against zone defense, guys who can play from the slot, and guys he can use in multiple different alignments. If you can get him one of those and add it to this room, that's an upgrade. When I look at the Patriots and what they need to be doing this year, I don't need them to jump 15 feet. Take a step. Just get a little bit better. Because Drake May is going to get better.
Yep.
The tight ends will continue to be good. The running backs, you can only hope that Ramondre Stevenson doesn't fumble the ball 150 times this year. If everybody can just take a step forward, it's a marked improvement and you're on the right track. At this point, with what we've seen in the last 2 years, just get the train on the tracks and then worry about getting it moving forward.
I love that. And that's what I think it comes with, is there's going to be that uptick and everyone's going to get better. You should. And it's still, they're going to pour a lot of draft assets and resources into the offense as well. Where we talk about Jalen Polk and Javon Baker, I think they draft 2 wide receivers minimum. 3 offensive weapons, running back, tight end could be that final. Yeah. Or maybe they go 1 receiver, 1 tight end, like a Harold Fandon or Gunnar Helm, and 1 running back, like Keenan Allen out of Syracuse, who you love. Donovan Edwards out of Michigan, who I love.
My boy.
Devin Neal out of Kansas. Tested awful in the combine. And then I just go back to watch his tape, how he played against a really good Iowa State defense, one of the best defenses in the country. They played at Arrowhead, the funniest thing, Iowa State, Kansas playing at Arrowhead Stadium.
It was so weird.
But Devin Neal is so electric, such a natural pass catcher, can fill so many needs, and that's how they can get better. When you look at this draft, and we'll talk about it too, I like you bring up the Josh Simmons. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. The question is with the draft picks they have, how many adds did they do to the offense? Because it has to be tackle, interior offensive line, and then weapons. Everything but quarterback they have to add and could add in this draft.
Right. And it's a great draft to add those guys. Like, I know you just mentioned it, but this tight end class is so deep, and this running back class is so deep. You draft a guy in the 5th round, he can end up being a legit difference maker in year 1. That's how deep this class is at those two positions. Quarterback, it's not. Good thing you got your guy last year. You don't have to worry about it. Tackle, it's, I had somebody ask me a question the other day of, why did they take this approach when this tackle class is so bad? And I pushed back right away. This tackle class is not bad. It's bad at the top. But in terms of depth, in terms of guys that you can draft and maybe develop into a starter, or at the very least, they can be your Dan Moores and your Vidarian Lowe's and your, like, a guy who can start games, and he might not be that great, but at least he can stay healthy and he can be there, and you can just trust that he's going to be not a disaster. That I think there are 15 to 20 of those guys in this draft. I truly believe that. So when there's this much depth, why not trust yourself to make the right choice? Because there aren't too many wrong choices in the class. So I agree with you 100% on depth. I think the one thing I'd push back on a little bit is why didn't they make a move on the interior to just solidify that, where the David Andrews release, right? You get rid of him and then you pick up Wes Schweitzinger, or however the hell you say his last name. And you're like, all right, here's our depth piece along the interior. And you're going to roll with City So and Cole Strange and Layden Robinson. I trust those guys are going to take a step, but you're opening up more spots for you to fill, essentially, in the draft. I would have just wanted, we need a tackle, we need a receiver, and then let's have some fun. Let's take the best player available. I'm not sure they're going to be able to do that now, so I'd push back a little bit there. But in terms of overall, the way you look at the draft and with what they need and what's going to be available to them, I think they're in a pretty decent spot.
Yeah. We'll talk about that just in a second, adding depth, and I love you bring up the center position as well. Hey, if you want to stream the entire Sox season with the NESN 360 annual plan, it's now available at an all-new, reduced price of just $20 a month, paid annually. And for a limited time, get 4 free tickets to Fenway with your purchase. Visit NESN360.com to sign up today. Because the question is, like, what do they do now? And let's focus wide receiver before we get to the tackle talk. But I like you bring up a guy like an Armand Membo. At number 4, with everything changing at the top 3, first off, the Bills and Sean McDermott. I don't like Sean McDermott as a head coach. I don't think he's that great. He's good. Like, you'd rather have him than there's like 15 other guys in the league. Like, you wouldn't mind having him, but he clearly has a ceiling. Yeah. The greatest thing he ever did for the Buffalo Bills was brilliantly throw that game against the Patriots in Week 18. They had backups in. Patriots had backups in. He was punting when they should be pushing to win, and he wasn't going to give the Patriots a number 1 overall pick. Brilliant. Because I think if they had the number 1 overall pick and it was Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter, Will Campbell in front of them, I think they just go Travis Hunter. I think it would make 1,000,000% sense. And we talk about this deep tackle class and what they do. It's not even that Bills game that cost them. To me, it's when they beat the Jets, when the Jets absolutely lost that game. 25-22. Yeah. Watching that, I was like, this sucks. Brilliant by whoever was leading the Jets at that point. Point being is that
Ulbrich, maybe? Who knows?
Right? Yeah, I think it was Jeff Ulbrich. They canned my boy Salah. They whacked him. Number 4, you're sitting there, Keegan. From what we pick up and what you see, top 3 in so many draft scenarios and reports is just so volatile. 2 quarterbacks, 1 non-QB. 1 QB, 2 non-QBs, which would be the Patriots' nightmare because they want Carter or Hunter to fall to them. What do you think happens? I'm asking you to go in the crystal ball. What would you do at 4?
If Travis Hunter's there, I'm taking him.
Yeah.
I think that's probably the obvious pick. We've heard people, I think more than anything, they have a little bit of Travis Hunter fatigue. But people saying, well, he's not that good. He's not a wide receiver 1 or a cornerback 1. On this team, he's a wide receiver 1. And on this team, he's the best cornerback 2 you can find because he's going to be playing in the slot with 2 studs on the outside, and your defense is going to be impossible to throw against. So if Travis Hunter's there, you take him. It's starting to look, with the way things are shaking out, Cleveland doesn't necessarily need to take a quarterback. They might. Do they want to roll with Kenny Pickett for another year and then just play out the Deshaun Watson contract? Who knows? I wouldn't want to, but I also haven't run the Cleveland Browns for the last 20 years into the ground like they have, so who knows? New York, they want a quarterback. Are they willing to go with Shedeur Sanders, who probably isn't worth being drafted that high? Are they willing to go there? Who knows? And then I think of Las Vegas. Because in a situation where Travis Hunter falls, I think Las Vegas needs to trade up. And they need to trade past the Patriots. They need to trade up either to number 3 or number 2 and just take Shedeur. Because I think Tom Brady loves Shedeur Sanders. I think Tom Brady has said in the past, I mean, we've heard him talk about it, and we've talked about him and this opinion. He does not like playing rookie quarterbacks at all, even a little bit. Like, he wants to sit them for a year, 2 years, get them developed, and then unleash them like the Jordan Loves of the world. He's been such a proponent of that. They just traded for Geno Smith.
Yep.
And Geno only has a year left on his contract. They need to either decide if they're going to pay him long term or if they're going to use this as a stopgap. Why wouldn't you just ride this out with Geno, go draft Shedeur Sanders, let him learn behind a guy who has been in a bunch of different systems. He's been a starter for a long time. He's had success the last few years. I think he developed in front of us. He grew up a lot throughout his career, Geno Smith. I can't think of too many guys in the NFL that are better for Shedeur to sit and learn behind. Does Dion let that happen? I don't know. But I've started to think in the last few weeks, maybe they do it. Maybe they just go for it. And they say, quarterback is the most important position on the field. It's the most important position in the sport. We need to address it, and we need to set ourselves up long term. And that's their way of doing it. So I think that's an option. And if I had to bet on it right now, I'm sure the odds would be very juicy for me. I wouldn't be surprised if they jumped ahead, they drafted him, and Travis Hunter falls to 4.
So you think Raiders could possibly jump to 2 or 3? That makes sense for the Browns even to trade back. You just signed Myles Garrett. You don't have that need for an Abdul Carter. You could still stink.
This is a no-win situation for them.
You can still stink, and maybe you get Arch Manning in next year's draft. Drew Aller. Seriously. Right. Oh, Aller? That'd be a homecoming. Like, hometown hero. Browns fans were banging the table for him to leave Penn State, and then he still has a way to go. Just a big dude, 6'5", 240. Huge.
He feels like a Browns draft pick who buries that franchise.
Yes.
Like, he's another disaster quarterback, and they set themselves back even further than they already are. But
my thing
I wouldn't be surprised. That's what they do.
You bring up the Browns, and you're like, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't draft Shedeur Sanders. But you're not Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski, whose jobs very well could be on the line. And you are not Jimmy Haslam, who has set up that team to operate like a, I guess, Fortune 500 company, you would say. Like, it's not GM, director of scouting, director of pro personnel, and then scouts. It's Andrew Berry and like 20 people in the room with him. Like, they're very analytically driven, very like beyond modern, which is where Vrabel came from, which is a good thing. Hey, Rob, this is how they did it there. Like, this actually works. Take the Browns thing out of it. Haslam's a moron. He gave Deshaun all that money. Don't worry about it. But like, understand this operates well. When you have all that on the line, and you don't want to, if you fire Berry, you have to fire 20 people. It's not firing 1 or 2 guys and keeping.
Right.
Like, and I think that enhances it. So there's 2 avenues. I like that Raiders, and I understand it. I could see Shedeur just falling to them at 6 until they pick up.
Right.
But I could see for that, well, no, because in this one I would have them going Shedeur at 2. But yeah, maybe that drives the Raiders to trade up. Maybe the Browns just trade back, and then they look to future on the draft. But I very well could see it going, Will Levis stinks. You go Cam Ward at 1. He's really good. He like checks all the boxes. And you beefed up your offensive line. You just need wide receivers in Tennessee. But by bringing in Dan Moore, you move J.C. Latham to right tackle. Skaronski's a good left guard. And you, like, the offensive line is set. You got to figure some more things out. You go Ward. Browns go Sanders at 2. Giants are stuck with their hands up. Maybe they would go Travis Hunter at that point. Maybe the Patriots trade up 1 spot, give up their 2nd, 3rd round pick, and go get a Travis Hunter.
Not after last year. I don't think Joe Shane's picking up the phone for the Patriots anytime soon.
Well, I mean, Elliot Wolf did what also everyone else did. Like, we're not moving from 3. We're going to stay put.
Yeah. I would assume if Elliot Wolf picks up the phone, Joe Shane's reading back the exact recording from last year of, yeah, we're not moving off it for anything. Sorry, pal. We're taking Travis Hunter here. I think Hunter is the best case scenario for them.
Yes.
I also think he's the best case scenario for New York, which is like,
you have a wide receiver too.
You know, you're one spot behind him.
Yeah. They have a good front 7, good defensive line. They need help in the secondary. And you have Malik Neighbors. And you have Malik Neighbors. You have your one. Then you bring in an elite.
And you're sliding, sorry to interrupt you, but you're sliding Hunter into a role that he's probably best suited for, which is a slot receiver who's not going to be playing every snap of the game because he's going to be such a big part of the defense. I think he maybe fits New York better than any team in the top 5. So that's where I have the pause. That's where I get a little bit nervous. But if New York just wants to give me as much draft capital as possible, we're going to move back for Las Vegas, for maybe even for New England. There's a chance there that Hunter falls to 4.
I feel like it's so difficult to see that happening, though. There's no way we're having this conversation mid-March, you from your car, me at the Nesson Studios, just gushing over all the ways. Like, you think Brian Dable's looking at Travis Hunter like, yeah, I'll pass on him. I want Abdul Carter. There's no way. There's no way. As much as I want to talk myself
when they put so much into that defense, too.
Right?
They put so much onto that defensive line. Look, Dexter Lawrence and Kayvon Thibodeau and Brian Burns. You're not drafting Abdul Carter there.
And you think Brian Dable, if anything, the Giants trade up to 1, put everything in to get a Cam Ward. And then Browns at 2 goes Shador. Titans at 3. But like Mike Borgonzi has been saying, there's generational talent in this draft. What's more generational than a guy that can be an elite wide receiver and an elite coverage corner? And if he's not one or the other, then fine. We got someone that is a really good corner and could play some receiver. A really good receiver and could play some corner, but he's not going to play full time. And like that's the best thing in the world. And that's why. So at 4, and you bring up the Josh Simmons, Armand Membo, out of Missouri. He will be 21 years old as a rookie. He's a right tackle, 2-year starter in that spot. This guy, you look at him, you're like, hey, he looks like a guard. His feet move so well, so fluid. He's still raw with his hand placement. Like, he very well will get flagged a ton for holding you, but that's like fixable. That's a guy, like, if you're looking at a Will Campbell, Armand Membo, that's a one of, okay, can you go to left tackle? But then what it opens up, Keegan, in my eyes, is the Caden Wallace thing and the Chuks Okorafor thing of you need a left tackle, you got a right tackle. Will Campbell is a left tackle. Kelvin Banks is a left tackle. Josh Simmons is a left tackle. And that's where I think, like, there is that scope of, do the Patriots go with Membo, who is just a sick athlete, massive ceiling, absolutely insane with all the measurables. And I think they go, we're going to pass up on the possibility of a left tackle, and we're going to go with a left tackle.
I agree with you in terms of let's get a guy who has played left tackle. We're not going through this again, but this kind of falls back to what I was saying earlier, where just because you whiffed on something one time, why aren't you going to try it again? Because I think Membu's the best player, or he has the highest ceiling, I should say.
Out of all
Will Campbell right now, if you need a guy to come play offensive line, whatever position it is, just straight up, who's the best offensive lineman on the board? It's Will Campbell. If you're looking at ceiling, it's Membu.
Yeah.
If you're looking at left tackle, it's Simmons. So now you've got 3 different qualifiers, and you're like, all right, what do I need? Do I need a left tackle? Do I need an offensive lineman? Do I need a high ceiling? And you're going to rack your brain, and you're going to go 100 different ways about it. Me personally, when I'm looking at what they need, I think they need a left tackle. They need a guy who has played there before, who can slide in and kind of shift everybody into the right position. Because if you have, and Josh Simmons is who I'm talking about here, if you have Josh Simmons, Layden Robinson, Cole Strange, Mike Onwenu, and Morgan Moses at right tackle, you have, at the very least, a capable starting 5.
Mm-hmm.
It's been 5 years since you've had a capable starting 5 along the offensive line. So I wouldn't be surprised, but like I said, you also have to play the board, where selecting Josh Simmons at 4 is probably dumb because you can trade back and still get him. So that opens up this entire possibility of how far do they trade back.
To a Vegas at 6,
right.
So they would move up. Hey, someone else is going to get Shador, and you get maybe an extra second-round pick.
I would say you could slide between 6 and 10 probably, and still feel very confident that you get Josh Simmons. Dane Brugler is a guy I really respect in terms of not just the way he evaluates talent, but what he gets from teams and how he slots these guys in different spots. He has been pounding the Armand Membu drum. Like, this is a guy who quite possibly could go at number 4. He could be the first tackle off the board.
Yeah.
But if you're going to be playing the high ceiling game, your entire, drafting history, you're going to have a lot more misses than you have hits. Sometimes it's okay to take a double.
Yeah, and like Josh, I love Josh Simmons. I absolutely love everything about him. The measurable's there. Yeah. Arm length is there. Same thing with Membu. 81-inch wingspan, I think, and he has 33.5-inch arms. And then I think Josh Simmons is even longer than him from what I remember too. But to the point of the
Josh
Patriots,
Simmons was built in a left tackle factory.
Yeah.
Like he fits the bill.
yeah, absolutely massive human, moves really well. And you have to, where
Yeah.
everyone goes, you have to have great hands in the run game. Like you need to put your hands on a defensive lineman or a linebacker and like they get stunned. Like that's where the heavy hands terms come from. Put your hands on them, they can't get them off, and you literally dictate where they go. And then what a Membu does well, what a Josh Simmons does really well, is with their footwork, they can mirror any edge rusher and buy the guy behind them, the QB, 3.5 seconds. With how freakish these edge rushers are across the NFL, how quick they are with their first step, the elite athletes they are, like that's why tackle is the hardest position in football. And it's so damn significant and so valuable for the Patriots and a team that like we can see that would want to trade up, like the Raiders at 6. And maybe they slide back again. It's multiple trade backs. But like for a team like San Fran, who's to say they don't want to trade up and take a Membu? Trade up and take a Josh Simmons? Because Trent Williams is getting old and getting paid a ton. Same thing with the Bears. I think they go more defense. But with the Jets, the Panthers need defense as well. Like, why would they not trade up for an Abdul Carter where they stink in the trenches? And that's where the possibilities open up. If a Travis Hunter there isn't there at 4, and they have an Abdul Carter or Will Campbell. There are other reports that keep coming out. There's a lot of fans in the building, but that could be the smoke, right? It's lying season when it's draft season, Keegan. Hey, we really want Will Campbell, so he's not going to fall to you, and then someone trades up for him. And that's where I understand that ceiling of Membu. You watch his tape, dude, and to be 2-year starter at Mizzou, which is significant. He's been playing right tackle. He didn't start playing football till he was a junior in high school. He's playing right tackle because Mizzou is basically like, we have a left tackle, play him at right. And you could be like, well, if he was so good at left, wouldn't they move him? Like, I don't know. But to be just 21, he will be a 21-year-old rookie. You're still raw, and you could still learn new muscle memory to be able to be a left tackle. And that's where Membu is such a volatile and the best way possible prospect. That's ceiling.
I think with Membu, too, the fact that he did play right tackle might be a positive because it might have protected Missouri from the fact that whoever was playing left tackle, sorry, I can't tell you what that guy's name was, but whoever that was, maybe he couldn't play anywhere else. Maybe he could only play left tackle. He couldn't move to the right side. And Membu had the versatility, so they moved him over there. And with Brady Cook, a athletic, I'll say, he's not a super athlete, but an athletic quarterback back there, you've got a right tackle who, at the very least, can keep him and his eyes free, and then he can move around a little bit. But you can pigeonhole yourself into thinking whatever you want.
Yeah.
Like you said, it's lying season. You're not just lying to other people, you're lying to yourself. So you can, if you like Membu a lot, you could say what I just said, where, well, maybe he was protecting Mizzou. If you don't like him, you could say, well, he can't play left tackle. Clearly, they didn't put him there. Why not just take the guy who you know can play left tackle and who's done it, and you can trade back, you can recoup more assets, and you can still get a guy who can slide in on day one. With modern medicine, the way these guys recover from Achilles and ACL injuries, like, a season-ending injury is not a career-ending injury anymore. It ended his season, and he is back healthy enough to have his own pro day. He'll be ready for OTAs. He'll be ready for training camp. I've talked myself into it. I think at the end of the day, the best possible outcome outside of Travis Hunter is trading back and taking Josh Simmons. Maybe that's crazy. I don't know.
You talk about gaining more draft assets. We'll talk about what they could do with that in just a moment. But also, if you're enjoying the show, be sure to check out Nesson's Daily Sports Podcast. Boston has entered the chat. We talk about everything trending in sports, not just in Boston, not just in the country, but across the world. That's Boston has entered the chat. Wherever you get your podcast, wherever you listen, wherever you watch as well. Love the people that stuck with us for the offensive line talk and just like talking through the how would you address Armand Membu and Josh Simmons.
Well, nine of you.
What do the Patriots do at wide receiver now, Keegan? That's a question. The free agents available, Stephon Diggs, Amari Cooper, Brandon Cooks, Keenan Allen. I'm not going to bring up Deontay Johnson. He will not fit in this locker room. Rondale Moore, who's like a twitchier Pop Douglas. The draft options that we got into, Ted McMillan, Travis Hunter, Matthew Golden, like sneaky good wide receiving prospect. Trey Harris, Elika Yomenor. Obviously, you're a Texas guy. Oh, no, you're an Ohio State guy. You're from Texas. Jalen Royals. My guys. I love Jalen Royals. I love Jaden Higgins. I love Jalen Noel. I love Xavier Restrepo. And I love Pat Bryant. Out of all that, what makes sense to you? Like, what would you do? Is there a free agent, a vet out there you like? Is there a draft prospect you like? Because if you trade back, get more draft picks, second round, if they address tackle in my eyes, say they go stay top 10, get Josh Simmons. You're in the second round. Whoever you trade back with, double dip. Jalen Noel, Jaden Higgins. Or maybe you use that to trade back in and get a Matthew Golden who won't make it out of the first round. And then you have another second round pick, though, where you get that Jalen Noel. I really love Jalen Noel, if you couldn't tell.
I do too. I kind of laid it out last time I was talking about this. I think you sign a veteran and you draft a guy early. So whether it's Stephon Diggs or Brandon Cooks, Brandon Cooks is the oldest 32-year-old of all time. He's been in the league since 2014. That's insane. The fact that he's only 32.
Yep.
But you draft or you sign one of those two guys. Do you want to deal with the headache of Stephon Diggs? Probably not. So you take a Brandon Cooks, a guy who has proven himself to be able to play on the outside. He can play in this system. He's played for Josh McDaniels before, and he's found success everywhere he's been. He was a 1,000-yard receiver up until like 2021, and then he started to slide into these like veteran wide receiver 2 roles. So I think you sign a guy like Brandon Cooks, and then with this added draft capital that you have from drafting Josh Simmons and trading back, you go ahead and you either trade back into the first round for Matthew Golden, or you trade back into the first round, or wait, depending on how the draft shakes out, for Emeka Ibuka, who is maybe the most pro-ready wide receiver there is in this entire draft. He'll never be a wide receiver 1, but I think he'll be a consistent, productive wide receiver for the next 7 to 10 years. Like, he's that good. He's a strong, physical slot receiver who can play in multiple alignments. He's the all-time leading receiver at Ohio State. He's going to be a good NFL receiver. Like, we're talking Michael Thomas and Chris Carter, and basically any guy who's been drafted in the first round in the last 7 years came from Ohio State. The
Chris Olave,
Marvin Harrisons of the world. Chris Olave. We can name 40 of them, and he's the all-time leading receiver. Is that because he stayed an extra year? Yes. But he was consistent. He played early. He played with all those guys we just named. So a Brandon Cooks and Emeka Ibuka and Josh Simmons, or a Brandon Cooks and Matthew Golden and Josh Simmons, that's a really decent offense. I'm not going to say it's really good. You need to see how all these pieces fit.
Yeah.
Obviously, rookies, it's a volatile thing. They could stink. They could be really good right away. It could take them some time. Those 3 names that I just mentioned, whether you can flip-flop Ibuka and Golden.
Yeah.
I think now with that, plus what you did during free agency, plus with all your depth, pieces that you'll draft throughout the rest of the draft, you're looking at a really decent roster that can contend for a wild card spot, or at the very least, be a watchable football team.
Yeah, Emeka Ibuka, 6 foot plus, 4.3 40. Golden, 5'11", 195, sub 4.3 40. And I've never really watched him and thought that was sub 4.3 40 time. But Golden tracking a ball in the air and how good Drake May is at with his accuracy on throwing a deep ball, that's the stuff you want. And that's a guy
it's art. It's insane.
It is. How good he is at it, how easy he makes difficult things look. That's how I define athleticism. How easy do you make it look? The athleticism that Matthew Golden does, while having that potential of that absolute breakout speed. You catch someone flat-footed, he's gone. That's what you want, and then you have him paired up. I like the Emeka Ibuka thought because he should be a first rounder. He will go in the first round. I think you just never know. But that's something where if you trade up and you take him and you don't risk that, you don't wait for 38 to get a Jaden Higgins, who I love, but is 6'4", is slower, is a slot, compared to Emeka Ibuka, who is a slot but quicker and just more pro-ready, like you mentioned, then that can work. That's where, and I like that you bring up the Brandon Cooks. We were going through the show last week, and I'm just looking at the available guys, and it just hit me, Brandon Cooks is still out there. Yes, he's coming off a career low in production of the year. The whole existence in Dallas was terrible, but like you said, played for Josh McDaniels in 2017. Likely, for him, how old he is, how long he's been in the league, he's hey, whoever wants me, I'll go. I don't care about winning at this point. Has won in the past. He's just down to do what it takes to continue to be on a roster, and I think he would take pride in pouring into these guys. Undersized receiver, isn't as quick as he was. He's a wide receiver 3. He'd be a wide receiver 2 here.
Yeah.
But he helps when you bring in rookies and the guys like the Polks and the Bakers, who we talked about at the beginning of the show. He helps them grow and move along as pros.
Yeah, and you mentioned Amari Cooper and Brandon Stephon Diggs. These are guys too. Amari Cooper very well could have just been injured last year.
Yeah.
And that's why he didn't look right, and he wasn't quite to the level of what we've seen. He's also very famously a year-on, year-off guy, where he'll have 2 really good years, and then he'll have a bad year. And then he'll have 3 really good years, and then he'll have a bad year. maybe that was just his bad year, and maybe he's ready to jump back up. He is 30. He's on the wrong half of that, so you have to worry about, did it just catch up to him at this point? But with what you already have in the receiver room and how much money you have to spend, throw a dart at one of these veterans. I think Diggs is the most volatile. You said that word, and now it's stuck in my head, but he could destroy this entire wide receiver room. He could also be a godsend, and he could be a great weapon for Drake May. He could bring him along. He could make the rest of the offense better just because he's a professional receiver. He gets open. I wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. I don't think I don't think Mike Vrabel would either, because he's very famously a culture guy, and he wants to have the right people in the building, and having a guy who cries and I was going to say a bad word. I didn't. Shout out Ethan. Yeah, thank you. On the sideline, you don't want that. So skip over the high ceiling guy and go ahead and just grab yourself a reliable veteran wide receiver who can slide into your wide receiver 2 role, and then take a shot at one of these rookies. Also, before we wrap this up, Tet McMillan, no thank you. I don't see it. I don't know what everybody sees. I just don't get it.
It's that he's just a wide receiver 1, like 6'4", 220, slim. And he's good.
Maybe.
Yes. And he's a wide receiver 1 in this draft. Yeah, to your point, maybe. Like Matthew
He played
Golden,
in the Big 12.
Yes. And he was the only thing on that offense. Him and Fafita, his quarterback. They run it back. Good catch radius. Plays like a volleyball player. Really good hands. Swallows a ball. Vacuum hands. Ball's near him. He's coming down with it. But at 6'4", 220, you got to be built the right way. You and I were talking about it off air last show we did, where there's a Vincent Jacksons and the Drake Londons that works. But otherwise, 6'4" receivers, that is such a big area. We talk about Carlton Davis, Christian Gonzalez, Travis Hunter, the length they have. That is such a big area for DBs to get their hands on you and just completely mess you up.
Right.
When dudes are as strong as they are in the NFL, there's a difference in matching up with a Big 12 D-back and an NFL grown-ass man defensive back.
A Big 12 defensive back who's 5'10", 175 pounds, the Jack Joneses of the world, who you can bully in the red zone and you can have success against. When you get to the NFL, Patrick Surtain's going to put you in handcuffs. Yeah. And then he's going to bury your face in the turf, and he's going to laugh at you while he does it. Christian Gonzalez is going to do the same thing. So I didn't mean to turn this into a bashing Tet McMillan sesh, but Julio Jones and Calvin Johnson and Vincent Jackson, Drake London, I'm taking Drake London out of that group, but physical freaks, 6'4" and 230 plus pounds. Also ran a 4.4, 4.3 40. Also had great testing numbers when it comes to explosion and short area quickness. That is not who Tet McMillan is.
Yeah.
He's a tall wide receiver who, like you said, he plays like a volleyball player, and he had success against smaller players at a lower level. Matthew Golden wasn't as productive. Played in a tougher conference.
Yeah,
he played in the SEC. He played in an offense that is so stringent on what wide receivers do. You are going to run this route, and you're going to run it like this, and you are going to have success because you're playing within Steven Sarkisian's system. Yep. That's how they teach their wide receivers. Also, Xavier Worthy was there, and who's the guy who said he was going to break his record and didn't even come close? Isaiah Bond was there last year. He got buried a little bit because he was younger and he wasn't quite as big of a prospect coming out of high school. But from what we saw in the last half of last college season into the playoff, Matthew Golden is very clearly the most impressive wide receiver. It's whether or not he can reach, the heights of what we expect him to be able to reach. Yeah. Tet McMillan, he is what he is. And I don't think it's going to be all that great at the NFL level.
It's ups and downs, too. It's Quinn Ewers one week. It's Arch Manning the next. It's Quinn Ewers unmobile in the pocket. And that's what happens, too. You talk about production. Where credit, it's also the consistency. Like Noah Fafita, not an NFL quarterback, but it's good to be consistent with your QB and your wide receiver out there. Hey, quick one. Really quick, Keegs. Jack Gibbons reportedly having interest in New England. Mike Reese was reporting the free agent linebackers considering making a visit to the Patriots, according to League Source, which makes sense considering his background with Vrabel. He was signed with Tennessee as undrafted free agent in 2022, just like Robert Spillane, how we found there. Titans didn't tender him as an RFA, making him free to sign with any team. And then also they brought in Marcus Epps. He seems like the free safety, which I absolutely love. Jack Gibbons, Keegan, what do you see? How do you see him fitting into this whole thing in New England?
I'm not going to pretend like I'm a Jack Gibbons super fan, like our producer Ethan is. But what I will say is if he's Christian Ellis If he's a really good special teams player who can slide in and play in this defensive system, which is just go clean up whatever's left out there for you, it's fine. I
Yeah.
don't think they should be spending a lot of money on linebackers anyways, because at the end of the day, it's so not important to this system that you just need bodies there and you need reliable players. If Gibbons can be that, all right, go ahead and sign him. Now linebacker's all set.
My thing, he's going to be 26. Juwan Bentley's going to be 29. He's quicker. He's a more sure tackler. Juwan Bentley's been a good Patriots player, and he doesn't fit this system. But Jack Gibbons, to your point, clean up what comes through. Watching the film of him, because I actually did, like on NFL Pro, go back. Let me see what it's about and watch the clips on Twitter. You just see him simply, defensive line holds up in front of him. He comes through like a missile and brings down guys. He brings a hit. And if he brings in that special teams attribute as well, that like a Christian Ellis does, is just an upgrade. Robert Spillane's a starting linebacker. Jack Gibbons will be a special teams, that backup linebacker. I don't think we see Juwan Bentley and Jelani Tavai on this roster. And then also Marcus Epps, super quick Keegs. What do you make of Epps signing?
They needed a free safety. They got a free safety.
That's it. And it was smart. If Kyle Duggar could play in the box and he's that second guy, that second linebacker in a 4-2-5, and Epps is playing free safety, fantastic ad. He's Keagan Stiefel. Keegs, enjoy the rest of the party. Have an extra piece of cake for me, my guy. I'm George Balekji. This is Foxborough Rush. Appreciate you guys making us a part of your day. We'll see you guys with a new episode on Wednesday.